Well, tonight, jurors in the Delphi murders trial are hearing from someone who was on the trail that day. It was the day Abby Williams and Libby German died.
Yes, that was February of 2017, and this witness also got into a heated confrontation with the defense during testimony today. Our Bob Siegel was in the courtroom for the graphic testimony and also that contentious debate.
And he just stepped out. He joins us now with a live look at what the jury heard today. Bob, please fill us in.
Tense and confrontational. That is how I would describe how testimony today began here at the Carroll County Courthouse with a witness who says that she saw the man who is accused of abducting Abby Williams and Libby German, specifically the man who is referred to as Bridge Guy. That man it was captured on an image on Libby's cell phone on the afternoon of the murders. Sarah Carbaugh told the jury she drove just a few feet away from Bridge Guy later that same afternoon. She testified for the jury, "I saw a man covered in mud and blood walking on the side of the road." She told jurors that his behavior was, in her words, sketchy, and he really stood out because he was wearing a lot of clothing on a warm day, and in her words, he was caked so much in mud he had to be right down by the river. But when it came time for cross-examination, defense attorney Andrew Baldwin pointed out her story about Bridge Guy has changed, specifically the part about the mud and the blood. He pointed out in her first interview after the murders, while talking to police, Carbaugh mentioned 11 times that the man that she saw was muddy, but didn't mention blood at all. During a second interview, she talked 16 times about Bridge Guy being covered in mud, but again, no mention of blood in the transcript of that second interview. And then 2 years later, during a third interview, the transcript shows she never mentioned Bridge Guy being muddy. Instead, it says he was bloody, something that she talked about 16 times during that interview. Carbaugh claimed none of that's true. And when the defense attorney asked if she wanted to review those transcripts to refresh her memory, she said she did not want to do that. So at one point, when she told the jury that she had passed just 3 feet away from Bridge Guy, at that point, Attorney Baldwin said, well, wait a second. Earlier in your testimony, in reports, you said that you were 20 feet away. And at that point, she snapped back at him in front of the jurors. She said, I didn't have a ruler or a measuring tape. Who does that while they're driving? Again, very testy exchanges. That was one of several that took place today. Later, the testimony turned from what I'd consider confrontational to just downright disturbing. That's when jurors got to hear testimony from the coroner who performed the autopsies on Libby and Abby on the day after they were murdered. Dr. Roland Kaur explained for the jury how he did those procedures and what he found. Jurors also saw graphic photos from the autopsies. They show Abby with a large neck wound, the coroner called it gaping, a 2 3/4 inch slash on the side of her throat that severed her jugular vein. The coroner also talked about photos that the jury saw of Libby. They showed 3 very large and deep holes in her neck. Those severed her jugular and 2 of her carotid arteries. So the coroner described how that would result in blood loss, a drop in blood pressure, a drop in heart rate, eventually the girls becoming unconscious and resulting in their deaths. And he estimated that that would have taken anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, although he said he was not completely sure about that. At one point, he mentioned that he thought that the wounds on their necks could be the result of perhaps a box cutter, but when he got some pushback from the defense attorney on that, he did say that he was not sure at all that it was a box cutter, and that he could not even really say how many weapons might have been used in the murders of the 2 girls. So it was a really hard day of testimony for the families and for the jury. One of the jurors, he buried his head in his hands. He barely looked at the autopsy photos at all. His face got bright red. Really difficult images and pictures to see in the courtroom. Coming up tonight at 6, There was one other witness that we heard from who talked to the jury today, and that witness had some very interesting information, some data that we now know came off of Libby's cell phone. We'll tell you about that coming up at 6. In Delphi, Bob Siegel, 13 News.
All right, Bob Siegel, our senior investigative reporter in Delphi. Thank you so much. And the defense is filing a new motion to allow their Odinism theory in the trial.
Richard Allen's attorneys say that the girls may have been part of a ritual killing. The judge previously blocked the defense from telling the jury about their alternative killer theory after the state argued that investigators dismissed the theory.
In a new court filing this morning, the defense asked permission again to tell the jury their theory and allow an expert on Odinism to testify. And there's a lot coming out of this trial every day, so we want to make it easy for you to get a more in-depth look at the developments.
That's right. You can check out our Delphi debrief. We have it for you weeknights at WTHR Plus at 10 o'clock every weeknight during the trial. That's where Bob Siegel and Emily Longnecker break down everything that they learned during the day in the courtroom.
WTHR Plus is a free download on Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, as well as Roku.